Every team tries to build the best possible roster, whether it's through the draft, through trades, or via free agency. First of all, they try and get the right head coach and coordinators. Then they try and find their franchise quarterback, a do-it-all running back, a solid offensive line, and receivers that can create matchup problems no matter what coverage or schemes the defense tries to run. A huge part of this has to do with chemistry, but teams are severely limited by the cap sometimes, and also the fact that there are 31 other teams that players might get drafted to, traded to, or choose to sign with. But what if we had none of these limitations? What would the best possible roster for an NFL team look like? Well, we're going to build that in today's video. More specifically, just looking at the offensive side of the ball. And this isn't a complete who's the best at their position video, although sometimes that might be the case, but chemistry matters here. So when we pick our wide receivers, it's not necessarily top 3, but who's our X, who's the slot, who's our Z, will they play well together, and will they fit in the scheme of the offensive coordinator we pick? So let's build the best possible offense in the league, and more importantly, explain why we have each player at the position we do. And at the end, we can talk about or debate in the comments, and if you enjoyed it, let me know if you'd like to see a defensive version of this video. There's obviously a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. Starting with the coaches, we're going to pick a head coach and an offensive coordinator. At head coach, I'm going with the GOAT, Bill Belichick. This was a pretty easy choice as he offers stability and a promise of a well-ran team, and we don't want our team to be mentally weak, and Bill will annihilate any sense of mental weakness day one at our facilities. He will bring in all the nuances of situational football as he has played in more big-time games than any other coach in NFL history. He will instill discipline that will minimize stupid penalties because the only way this team ever loses is if we beat ourselves. And he also brings a great winning culture to our locker room. But at offensive coordinator, we had a ton of great options here. And not being affected by recency bias, the guy I want is Sean McVay. It was close, but after watching a ton of Rams games the last few years and really getting in their film this offseason, he is the most well-balanced offensive coach when it comes to creativity in his schemes in both the run and the passing game. He gets the most out of every team he's coached for so far, and he has gone from a run-heavy play-action team to a run-and-gun spread team and is shown to be successful at almost everything in between. He understands who he's working with, and he runs the basic fundamental plays beautifully. He knows where to find the smallest advantages, and he always has a trick up his sleeve and seems to know exactly when to call it. But with that out of the way, let's get to the players. At quarterback, I went back and forth for a while between a handful of guys, but our starting quarterback is going to be Josh Allen. You can't deny Mahomes' talent, but with Allen, we are getting a guy who can also make every throw imaginable on the field, and he has really improved in his pre-snap reads and decision-making to get where he's at now. He's not offering as many unscripted magical plays that Mahomes can bring, but that's not to say that he can't create outside the pocket as well, because he's also very good at it. And I don't want our offense to be reliant on those plays, and sometimes Mahomes can do this to a fault. And our offensive line is going to be so good that it probably won't be necessary all that often, but his game inside the pocket is elite. But then why I chose him over Rodgers and Brady is his ability in the design quarterback run game. He is a 6'5", 240-pound tank, and when the Bills unleash this come playoff time, third and shorts are almost a given with the pressure he puts on defenses with his arm and his legs. So that is why we're taking Josh Allen. But moving on to the running backs, we're going to have two in our lineup, a starter and a backup. And our running back one is going to be Jonathan Taylor. Even though I think Derrick Henry is still the best running back in the league and you can have a whole offense built around him, for our style, our team isn't going to be based around mostly under center, force feeding the rock, carry after carry for him to have a huge second half. Jonathan Taylor is exactly what we need. He can be physical between the tackles, he can take advantage of all the great blocking he's going to get, and as soon as he hits the hole, he can break away with his 4.39 speed, and he had the fastest recorded speed of any player last season, running over 22 miles per hour. He not only led the league in yards last year, but even though he had the most yards before contact, he also had 250 more yards after contact than second place on the list, while also being third in the league in broken tackles. There were a lot of good choices here, but Jonathan Taylor is our man. And our RB2 is Alvin Kamara. This 1-2 punch is going to be deadly. We can think of Kamara as our third down back, but he's obviously much more than that. But I'm taking him here for his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. He has had over 700 yards in 3 of his 5 seasons in the league and has the potential to be the best receiving option on the field during certain times. He has such a great feel for choice routes and making people miss in the open space. And this isn't to discredit what he can do as a pure running back, but this is why we chose him over some better pure running backs like Nick Chubb, Dalvin Cook, or even an up-and-coming guy like Najee Harris. But moving on to our receivers, like I mentioned earlier, we're going for chemistry here. We're going to pick an X, a Z, and a slot receiver, and we're going to throw in a bonus guy if we decide to run some sort of 4 receiver set. But Josh Allen and McVay are comfortable and run more 11 personnel sets than almost anyone else in the league, so the 4th guy will not be a starter. And at X, we are going to take Justin Jefferson. It was between him, D-Hop, and a few other guys, but the more I watch Jefferson, the harder it becomes to find a flaw in his game. His release package is among the top in the league, as well as his route running. He's a physical and willing run blocker, and this offseason he put on even more size. What he's been able to do with Kirk Cousins has been remarkable. Kirk isn't bad by any means, but in our McVay offense, he is going to thrive with Josh Allen having unlimited range on his throws and rarely missing on his deep shots. He had the 2nd most yards in the league last year, but also the most yards before the catch. He is going to be the perfect 3-level target for our offense at the X position. And our Z receiver is going to be the one and only Cheetah Tyreek Hill. You can't teach some things in this game. You can't teach the size that Megatron or Vincent Jackson had, and you can't teach the speed that Tyreek Hill possesses. There's a narrative out there that he doesn't have to run the best routes because of his speed, and while this is true, he technically doesn't. He actually has some amazing routes as well, and he is far from just a go-ball receiver. Actually, only 2 of his 111 receptions came on go-balls. The rest were slants, sticks, drags, comebacks, corners, whips, digs, almost everything else. All the other deep balls were from broken plays that him and Mahomes created. He can just simply do things on a field, i.e. the playoff game against Buffalo, that I think no other receiver in the league could have made. And Andy Reid being an offensive guru and was a top candidate for our OC position, McVay can do very similar things with him, if not make him even better. But he's going to be a weapon on the field that makes the defense yell out where 10 is before every single play. And finally, our slot receiver isn't going to have to get used to a new offense at all because we are going with Cooper Kupp. What is there to say? The most receptions, yards, touchdowns, yards after catch, and one of the best run blocking wide receivers we have in the NFL. His uncanny ability to get open, catch the ball, break tackles, and get first downs and touchdowns is historic. And there was no secret where the Rams were going with the ball. There was just simply no solution to stop him. He was really an easy choice here for our slot position. And our 4th receiver for certain sets is going to be Davante Adams, possibly the best receiver in the league, and this is why it felt so weird leaving him off the list originally. But that's why this isn't a ranking list. But his versatility to line up on the inside or outside is going to be great for us, and that's why he was a perfect candidate for this role. You just can't leave him one-on-one. He'll either torch you off the line and then go on to run any route imaginable on the route tree or not, or just burn right past you. And if you get so lucky to play perfect coverage, he's possibly the best back shoulder receiver we have in the league. His late hands and his ability to stay in bounds and time up the spin perfectly is going to be a major weapon when we decide to spread it out. Okay, moving on to tight ends. Again, we're going to go with 2 here. But our starting tight end is going to be George Kittle. This may or may not be a surprise to some, but it shouldn't be if you just heard the 4 unbelievable receivers we just added to our team. And we will also have Kamara in some sets being able to catch the ball out of the backfield. Kittle is no slouch by any means when it comes to catching the ball, don't get me wrong, but he is the best 2-way tight end in the league and is a legitimate extension of the offensive line. And you probably saw the same trend with Jefferson, Kupp, and Josh Allen. There are so many talented people. We need guys that can do it all so we can be the most dominant running and passing team in the league for whatever situation calls for it. But Kittle is using the Shanahan's offense as a super athletic pulling guard and tackle in the run game, an absolute mismatch on the outside on corners and safeties, and even some linebackers have trouble sizing him up. And he's talented enough to seal the edge all by himself if a defense has a 6-eye technique, which allows the tackle and guard to pull through on outside runs. And he is still top 4 in the passing game. He's not quite the pure route runner like some others are, but he has really good open field speed, and on play action when he's coming up towards the linebackers, they're usually trying to avoid him and not pushing him off his route, which will be a huge advantage for us. But that doesn't mean I'm going to get too cute with our second tight end here. It is Travis Kelce, the best pure receiving tight end we have in the league. And how he does it is almost unexplainable. It's so technical, and he just has insane football IQ, and his body is built like Gronk, where he can win against big or small defenders and just forget about running zone coverages, because he just has a knack to squirm into the smallest of gaps to find a way to get in the smallest open spaces or just get behind you with really nice route manipulation. And finally, we have the offensive line. The left side of our line is probably the easiest part of this entire video list. It is Trent Williams at left tackle and Quentin Nelson at left guard. There's not much to say about these guys. These are the best in the league at their positions, and it's not too close. Both multiple first-team All-Pros and several Pro Bowls, and both have arguments to be among the best ever at their position. They don't give up sacks. They absolutely manhandle people in the run game, both in zone running schemes and when they pull. They're athletic to work in space and just blow up lanes for the running back. So moving on, at center, we are going with Corey Linsley from the Chargers. This might be one of the hardest positions for me in the NFL to grade and watch on tape. I absolutely fell in love with Jason Kelce and his athleticism, even at the age of 34, after making several Eagles videos and watching him block 20 yards down the field. But Corey Linsley, the longtime Packer, tests off the charts both in run and pass blocking, so I went and watched for myself, and I saw nothing to contradict what NFL scouts say about him. And actually, okay, this is normally a time I would go back and delete this in my notes, but I want you guys to be able to follow along with the thought process. I actually am going to take Jason Kelce. The more I thought about it, I love the flexibility he brings with his athleticism to pull from the center position with Nelson and Williams to his left. I think this would be great for all zone and trap concepts, so final answer is Jason Kelce. Sorry for switching things up, but the more I thought about what McVay might want to do, the more I started leaning towards the Eagle. And at right guard, we have Zach Martin. This was also a pretty easy selection. 5-time first-team All-Pro in his 8-year career, and he has been the stable force on this Cowboys offensive line. And when they really need a play, they'll likely run it behind this big man because he paves a road for running backs to follow. He only allowed 1 sack last season in 16 games, so I'm really already loving our offensive line so far with our ability to run all kinds of running schemes, and Josh Allen should have an entire basketball shot clock to make every single throw to the receivers and tight ends that we mentioned earlier. And finally, wrapping things up, at right tackle, we are going with yet another Eagle, Lane Johnson. Lane Johnson only gave up 11 pressures all season long, which is absolutely ridiculous. Tristan Wirfs was another good option for us, and maybe in a few years it could be a different story, but like we mentioned before, he only gave up 11 pressures and 0 sacks while being one of the most athletic tackles we've ever seen. And this is a huge weapon for us in the run game. The Eagles ask him to do so much on all aspects of their offense, and he delivers with flying colors across the board. Okay, that was a lot, but to remind everyone what we came up with, we're going to throw up our team on the screen now. Maybe some positions were surprising, maybe some were super obvious, but this wasn't meant to be controversial. This was a fun thought experiment to put together the best possible team with chemistry included. And maybe if you didn't choose McVay or think that was the right choice at all, then this list would look entirely different. So that's just why this is the beginning of the conversation, because maybe you completely disagree with a player I picked or disagreed with my explanation of why I have them there. So let's start the conversation in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and make sure to leave it a like and let me know if you'd like to see a defensive version of this video. And as always, make sure to subscribe if you enjoy daily NFL content. But that's going to be it for us today. So as always, I will see you all tomorrow. Peace!